Hello, everybody. Rick Manning, Americans for Limited Government. Today, we've had the first hearing of the House impeachment inquiry. Remember, this is the beginning of the House impeachment process. What we've been watching up until now has been really preseason. The House now has expanded subpoena powers, has a lot of other powers, but the fact is, a powerful case has already been made that Joe Biden has engaged in impeachable offenses. Here's Jim Jordan from the hearing today talking about some of the evidence.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. This is a tale as old as time. Politician takes action that makes money for his family, and then he tries to conceal it. Never forget 4 fundamental facts. Hunter Biden gets put on the board of Burisma, gets paid a lot of money. Hunter Biden's not qualified, fact number 2, to sit on the board. Not my words, his words. He said he got on the board because of the brand, because of the name. Fact number 3, the executives at Burisma asked Hunter Biden to weigh in and help them with the pressure they are under from prosecutor. It starts the process of getting that guy fired. Those facts, by the way, are consistent with what the confidential human source told the FBI, and the FBI recorded in the 1023 form, the same form that the Justice Department didn't want to let this committee see. And all those facts, all of that was further confirmed yesterday with the information that the Ways and Means Committee released from the whistleblowers Shapley and Ziegler. Here's a communication from Hunter Biden to an executive with Burisma. Devin and I do feel comfortable with Blue Star strategies and the ability of Sally and Karen to deliver. Hunter Biden put Burisma in touch with Blue Star Strategies. What were they going to deliver? Well, that was in a communication released yesterday as well. U.S. officials in Ukraine and in the United States need to express support for Burisma and Nikolai Zlochevsky to the highest level decision makers, the president of Ukraine, the president's chief of staff, and the prosecutor general. That's what they were going to deliver. And were they successful? The Interior Minister confirmed that Zlochevsky is no longer wanted. We won in less than a year communications between the folks at Blue Star and Eric Sherwin, who was Hunter Biden's business partner. Awesome work. Congratulations to you guys. Those are the communications. That's what they got done. And remember, when this happens in October 2016, when the pressure is taken off, the case is dropped against Zlochevsky, this is the second prosecutor. Joe Biden fired the first one. The second prosecutor comes in, drops the charges. That's exactly what they wanted done. And the final step is the Biden Justice Department tries to sweep it all under the rug. They slow walk the investigation. They let the statute of limitations lapse for the most important years, 14 and 15, the Burisma years when all that income's coming in. They try to put together this sweetheart deal and get it past the judge. And we learned yesterday in the search warrant examining Hunter Biden's electronic communications, they weren't allowed to ask about political figure 1. Political figure number 1 is the big guy, is Joe Biden. And they would have gotten away with it all. They would have gotten away with it all except for 2 brave whistleblowers who sat in those seats 2 months ago and told their story. And their story has stood up. 2 brave whistleblowers and a judge in Delaware who said, we're not going to let this happen. That's why we're here today. That's why this inquiry is so darn important. It's the oldest story in the world, and those are the facts. I yield back.
Wow. That is powerful. If you don't do anything else, share this video so people see that 2 minutes. That lays out in 2 minutes the scheme and exactly what happened. Now, there's a lot of other facts that could be interwoven in, but for people who continue to say, where's the evidence? That video, arming people with that video so they have a way to answer that question. Don't believe me, listen to this. And they might say, oh, that's Jim Jordan. We don't care what he has to say. but they can't refute what he says because it's all fact. So let's just see, we've got another clip by Mr. Jordan, because he's talking in this clip to a witness, Jonathan Turley, who earlier had expressed doubts as to whether or not, earlier in the hearing, had expressed doubts as to whether or not there was adequate evidence to impeach Joe Biden right now. And so, and that got a lot of play, and it's going to get a lot of play in the news. So I want you to see Jim Jordan's communication questioning of Jonathan Turley, because things kind of shift a little bit. And amazingly, what's being reported on it, the headlines that were taken by the breathless media trying to provide exculpatory information to the public that Joe Biden hadn't done anything and the Republicans were on a witch hunt, Turley kind of undercuts that argument. So watch this.
Chair now recognizes the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Mr. Jordan from Ohio.
Thank you. Professor Gerhardt, it wasn't just a speech. He leveraged $1 billion of American tax money, and he did so at a time when our government was supportive of the prosecutor. Here's what our government said. The Assistant Secretary of State, we have been impressed with the ambitious reform and anti-corruption in your government written to the Prosecutor General, who judges our money to get fired. The United States fully supports your efforts to fight corruption, she further wrote. The Interagency Policy Committee said this on October 1st, 2015. The IPC recommends moving forward with a third loan guarantee to Ukraine in the near term. And even after Joe Biden gives the speech on December 9th, the European Commission said the corruption benchmark is to have been achieved for Ukraine. But the most telling evidence is what his business partner said. Devin Archer, when we deposed him under oath just 2 months ago, said this. Here's the question. The request was help from the United States government to deal with the pressure they were under from their prosecutor. You know what Mr. Archer's response was? That's correct. Next question. What did Hunter Biden do after he was given that request? He called his dad. That's what we're investigating. That's one of the three things Professor Turley talked about, the influence peddling scheme. I want to go to those three things, Professor Turley. False statements, influence peddling scheme, and Joe Biden might have benefited. Let's do the third one first. Is a benefit to your family, can a benefit to your family be a benefit to you?
It is. There's been repeated statements that you need to show that President Biden accepted direct money in order for this to constitute a benefit, even under criminal cases that deal with bribery, extortion, the Hobbs Act. The courts actually have rejected that. They've said that money going to family members is in fact a benefit. And I don't really see any legal basis for that. Obviously, the strongest case is if you have a direct payment. But this idea that you can have millions going to a politician's family and that's not a benefit, I think is pretty fallacious.
Yeah. How about the false claims thing? In your written testimony, you said to the extent that the president has used the White House, I think this is a little broader. To the extent the president used the White House staff to maintain false claims or resist disclosures, it can fit into the type of Nixonian abuse of power model. We know all kinds of false statements have been made by the White House. Joe Biden's made them. He said it was a lousy question when they asked him, have you ever been involved, talked to any one of your son's business partners? We know that was false. Ron Klain said, the president's confident his son didn't break the law. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, never spoke to his son about his overseas business dealings. What do you think about all those false statements from the White House in this abuse of power issue?
Well, the involvement of White House staff and executive branch staff has been really one of the tripwires that we saw in Nixon, to some extent even in Clinton. The degree to which you enlist support for a false narrative or to obstruct Congress can go into things like abuse of power. One of the things that I suggested is that if you look at past impeachment inquiries, and once again, this is an inquiry to find evidence, you're not voting on articles of impeachment. Those allegations tend to develop last, and you look at what you have found.
Yeah. How about the Attorney General? I'm concerned about statements he made. March 1st, 2023, in front of the Senate, he was asked a question about Mr. Weiss's investigation. He said this in response to Senator Grassley. Mr. Weiss has full authority to bring cases in other jurisdictions if he feels it's necessary. Last week, the Attorney General told us that Weiss had the authority because I promised him he would have the authority if he asked it. That seems to me to be something different. It's what he said to the Senate. He's got full authority, no problem. Last week, he told the House Judiciary Committee he had authority because I promised if he come talk to me, I would give him the authority that I already told the Senate he had. Do you see a concern there with false statements coming from the Biden Justice Department?
Well, there is a concern. You don't have to prejudge the evidence to say that obviously this is part of the inquiry. And what I don't understand is the opposition to the inquiry itself. It seems to me the test is, would the alleged conduct, if proven, establish impeachable offenses? And is there a credible basis for those allegations? I think the answer is clearly yes, that there is a basis to look at the president's conduct without prejudging whether that it qualifies at the beginning of that inquiry as an article of impeachment.
And let's be clear, you don't need a full vote of the House to proceed in an impeachment inquiry phase of our constitutional duty to do oversight. In fact, the Democrats did it. 4 years ago, I was in an impeachment deposition run by Adam Schiff in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol, and I went to the floor. So I'm in an impeachment deposition, and I went to the floor to vote on opening an impeachment inquiry. They did the same darn thing because you have that authority as a Congress when the Speaker of the House makes that designation.
The Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, did in fact initiate the impeachment. In some cases, then you have a later vote. I've said in my testimony, I consider that the best practice to have a vote of the House. But the court that was referenced earlier looked at this and said that the Constitution does not require resolution. Actually said if you look at all the impeachments, often there wasn't a resolution. That doesn't mean it's not a good practice, but the Constitution itself does not require such a resolution.
Thank you. Gentlemen, time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Lynch from Massachusetts for 5 minutes.
Okay, well, there you go. So, things, like a lot of things in this town, things get complicated. But what's clear is that Turley believes that the three things that he said needed to be met were met, recognizing that this was the beginning of the process. And one thing that I will tell you, I get asked this all the time on the air when I do radio and TV. I get asked, in fact, I got asked it this morning by a very good reporter who really knows his stuff. I got asked very specifically, well, don't we have to prove, doesn't it have to be proved that Joe Biden personally got money? Turley makes it clear, no. The courts have ruled that you don't have to prove that. You have to prove that the family got money, that can be a benefit. Well, guess what? Not only did Hunter Biden get money, but 8 of his fellow family members have gotten money. A lot of money, millions of dollars of money. And all they were selling is Joe Biden access and supposed power that he had. And guess what? If you go back and replay the 2 minutes at the beginning where Jim Jordan talks, he lays out exactly how government policy was changed. Government policy was changed after a phone call from Burisma. Guess what, folks? That's game, set, match in many respects. This inquiry is going to go and it's going to look at emails and hopefully get access to emails that Joe Biden sent using accounts that weren't available, haven't been made available. 4 of them, as a matter of fact, where he was busy doing business between foreign governments and Hunter Biden on the same email. It's not like, gee, he forwarded it to Hunter later. No, they were on the email together. Hunter Biden was delivering the brand. Hunter Biden got paid a lot of money because he could deliver the brand. We found out, and Chairman Chairman Comer, I wish these guys had dissimilar names, but Chairman Comer said earlier in this hearing, very simply, money got sent from a communist Chinese organization directly to Joe Biden's house It's in 2019. Communist China money went to Joe Biden's house in Delaware. It didn't go to Hunter Biden's house in California. It went to Joe Biden's house in Delaware. Hunter Biden wasn't living there. Hunter Biden was in California. Joe Biden was in Delaware. The Chinese knew who they were sending the money to. Now, they didn't expect it to ever come out, but they knew who they were sending the money to. So, all in all, even if the check was made out to Hunter, they wanted to make sure Joe saw it, that a payment had been made. And if a payment's made, you're expected to deliver what's been promised. So, there's a lot more that's going to be coming out in this inquiry. But if I were Joe Biden right now, I'd be real worried, because the fact is, what exists right now in terms of what we know doesn't pass any smell test for anybody who's not a blind partisan. You don't set up 20 shell corporations, 13 bank accounts to run money through to, 8 family members, 9 family members. You just don't do that under normal circumstances. And yet they did. We know from a confidential source that the head of Burisma bragged that it would take people, years and years and years to unwind the complex payment routing system that had been devised to hide these payments. And as Jim Jordan said, we knew some of it, but we didn't know nearly as much, if not for IRS whistleblowers coming forward, getting their heads ripped off by their bosses and in the media, being attacked and abused, and not really afforded the whistleblower protections by the Biden administration, by the way, that are legally required. But if those whistleblowers hadn't gone up and said, this is what happened, these weren't partisan Republican whistleblowers. One was a hardcore Democrat, just doing his job. And quite honestly, being the kind of civil servant that we used to expect them all to be, honest, just doing his job. Not allowed to ask about any connection with Joe Biden, not even ask, not inquire, not look and see if things meshed. Because in a politicized IRS, in a politicized Justice Department, in a politicized administration and civil service state, you can't touch the third rail. And the third rail is the big guy. And so they were precluded from asking the most obvious questions and chasing the money trail to the most obvious places. That's obstruction that occurred during the Biden administration. While, we've heard a lot about obstruction of justice during the Trump administration and subsequently. And the definition on the left of obstruction of justice when it comes to Donald Trump is, well, you put up a defense against our prosecution, and that's an obstruction of justice. For all intents and purposes, that's what they declared obstruction of justice. You expended, you actually used your legal rights to seek that the laws being followed by the prosecution. That's an obstruction of justice for Jack Smith. But real obstruction of justice is having the Justice Department say, no, you're not allowed to actually look at the records of the President of the United States because it might be criminal. So you can't look. We got a don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to the IRS and Joe Biden's records. Whereas the same Joe Biden who demanded that Donald Trump release his tax returns and said, oh, I'm releasing mine. And he was so gleefully releasing his tax returns. except for apparently his tax returns didn't reflect a lot of money that flowed through. At least it may not have. We won't know. We may never know unless certain bank records get turned over and certain emails get turned over. But folks, know this: the money given to Hunter Biden, the money given to James Biden, Joe Biden's brother, and others, including Biden grandchildren, is every bit as much of a payoff to Joe Biden as if they gave him gold bars to stick in his pockets, like was allegedly given to Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey. It's every bit as much, every bit the same. No differentiation, particularly when you can show action followed payment. So quid pro Joe is in trouble. This is the first step of that process of him being in trouble. Be encouraged. Go to Americans for Limited Government, getliberty.org, and sign the impeach Joe Biden petition if you have not already. And please share this video. It really is important that people see the Jim Jordan 2 minutes, the whole first 5 minutes of this. It's very important people see it. With that, I appreciate you tuning in, and we will sign off until tomorrow.